At this point, we switch to Ken Hasselman's memoirs. He writes, land ownership was an aspect of cooperatism that Charlene had never addressed. The village, in her example, was assumed to live in a kind of group residency, but this was clearly not what she had in mind for a modern society. How would private dwellings be determined? Tracy started us out by saying, since last class, I've really thought about this idea of land ownership. Ownership becomes superfluous, doesn't it? There's really no need. In a non-money system, it serves no purpose. Land ownership is no longer some sort of financial asset. You can't sell it. There is no selling or buying anymore. Everyone would have full, free use of their residence as if they owned it, and they would be entitled to live there as long as they wished. And if you really think about it, this is not so far afield from what already occurs in a money system. No one actually owns a piece of property anyway, unless they're not paying taxes on it, right? Everyone is basically renting from the local towns and governments by way of property taxes. Think about it. What happens if you stop paying property taxes? You lose your property, right? So you don't own it. You're allowed to use it for a fee. You're basically renting. However, in cooperatism, you can't lose it because you're not renting. But you don't really own it either. There's no equity in it. You just live there until you decide to move. Then it's free for someone else to move in if they want to. Eliminating land ownership doesn't really change anything except the fact that there are no more taxes or legal logistical hassles of owning property. In a money system, I guess it may be considered an asset, but in cooperatism, ownership would simply be a burden, limiting your freedom. She elaborated, in a money system, there is a great deal to consider when moving to a new location. You need to find a buyer for your current residence, then find something you're able to afford in your new location. There are real estate agent fees, lawyer fees, abstracts, mortgages, property taxes to consider, homeowners insurance, school district taxes, moving costs, and you need to have or find a new job. In cooperatism, these details disappear entirely. There could be a segment of the workforce for relocations that could maintain a housing availability database which would continually update for every locale. It would list the current records of all types of residences and their availability nationally. As an example, if you live in Ohio in a suburb-type setting and decide you'd like to move to Miami, Florida for a while, you could research what is available that suits your purposes in and around Miami. Individuals will instantly have access to those vacant listings in the Miami area. Let's assume that there will be Miami residents who, after living there for a while, for whatever reasons, are looking to move to other locations. Then places would become available. Katie added, it would become a matter of finding an available abode in the area you wish to move to, reserving it online, relegated by some sort of first-come, first-served rule, then moving to it. If you're still in your workforce years, you are simply reassigned to the new area's workforce roster. Easy. Then Emma asked, but what if there's nothing available in Miami? What if more people are trying to move there than are leaving? Joe answered, there could always be some sort of contingency plan for those who may be looking to move somewhere where availability may be limited. The workforce building and construction segment in that area could provide apartment-type units always available for people to occupy temporarily while their search continues. Or, based on demand, the building and construction segment would build more residences. Or some people might elect to build their own. Mike then observed, I'm looking at Milt's occupational chart, and I'm thinking it's a good thing we didn't eliminate all of the, let's see now, he started reading from the list. All of the urban and regional planners, all of the statisticians, all of the secretaries and administrative assistants, all the networks and computer systems administrators, all the logisticians, all the information clerks, all the web developers and computer network architects, all of the computer and information research scientists, all the computer and information systems managers, all the administrative service managers, and all the archivists from our workforce numbers, because keeping track of all those statistics is going to be quite a job. It's not that I don't think it's feasibly qualified. I do. In fact, I think it's very feasible. I mean, think of all the information and statistics out there available and accessible on the web right now. It's mind-boggling. Just all of the financial information alone, accounting information and records, tax records, stock trading and price indexing. It's colossal, he exclaimed. And all of that financial information would be eliminated, clearing the way for new databases and record keeping, such as tracking houses and relocation statistics, as well as the workforce statistics. This would all need to be managed digitally and made available online, so I'm merely commenting that information systems, electronic record keeping, and databases will need to be a very integral part of a modern cooperative society. So let's make sure we keep those numbers included in the workforce. Tom added, "It sounds like the building and construction segment of the workforce will be very active as well." Then Roger said, "Certain areas, with regards to residences, at certain times might see a lot of activity due to the shifting nature of people relocating for whatever reasons. Other areas might remain very stable in terms of housing due to a relatively constant population." Linda continued, "I'm thinking this might make it easier for those who wish to live a more nomadic life, moving frequently to different areas every couple of years, just for variety or maybe for climate considerations. The population would be far freer in terms of relocating and therefore experiencing life in various parts of the country, opting for more modest type dwellings like apartment styles. As far as the rest of society," she added, "those individuals who prefer spending as little time as possible maintaining their residence would opt for smaller living quarters, such as apartment or townhouse type homes. This would also be appropriate for urban life, space being a factor. Those who enjoy a more suburban life, with a desire for lawn and gardens and a bit more room for raising a family, may opt for more upkeep responsibility. Variety and choice would have to be available to some degree, and the choice would depend on your lifestyle at the moment and what you're willing to maintain. Anyone who desires to build or modify their residence to their own tastes and needs is free to do so." Scott then pointed out that land use could be more easily zoned according to the needs of the population, without a person's or corporation's wealth factoring in and tipping the scales favorably one way or another. A community or area's population could plan the layout of their town or city without developers and money concerns entering the mix. Agriculture, I'm thinking, would be used for the most fertile land, followed by choice areas for the cultivation and gathering of natural resources such as mining and forestry. Appropriate sites would be designated for workforce industry and distribution centers, and of course, housing and residential land use would be plotted out. Then John proposed, "I think with this ability to be able to plan land use more efficiently, there would be more land conservation, more emphasis on national parks and recreation. Currently, zoning seems to be based more on economics and purchasing power, resulting in a more or less arbitrary, sprawling, and often inefficient land use." As people pondered this and there was a momentary gap in the discussion, Strickland took the opportunity to say, "Okay, let's see where we're at. There would be no ownership of land, only land use. Land would be used according to the needs of the area and or population at large. Everyone would be assured a residence. There would be no cost for this. It would be considered an entitlement. However, the type of residence would depend on the resident's ability and desire to maintain it. So people would choose the type of residences that fit their lifestyle and that they would be willing to maintain. Housing will be built by the workforce according to need. As the population increases in an area, the workforce, if necessary, would increase the housing accordingly. Individuals will have private use of a residence in which to live, which may include a modest plot of land which can be used privately as they see fit. I'm guessing there will be no dictum against the size of one's residence, structurally speaking. This could vary. People would choose what they have the time and or desire to build and maintain. Groups of friends or relatives may choose to reside together in larger estate-type structures, sharing the maintenance responsibilities. None of these choices would need to be permanent. An individual would be free to change his or her preferences periodically as it suits them. This freedom includes type of residence as well as the geographic location and is subject only to their whim, availability, and zoning regulations. Our class went on to postulate that there would be a great deal of fluctuation in where people would choose to live. Some people would choose to remain in the same place all or most of their lives, but most people, given the freedom to do so, would likely want to explore many areas of the country before, if ever, settling down to a more or less permanent location. So residences in general would be in a constant state of flux and would promote a great deal of opportunity for those wishing to move. Strickland concluded with, so unlike in the money system, an individual's freedom to move would not be contingent on any financial concerns. It is assumed that the workforce would be versatile and flexible enough to accommodate all levels of a society's ever-changing and nomadic existence. As an area of the country grew or diminished in population, so the workforce would also grow or diminish according to that area's need. For the next class, let's talk about commodity distribution. How does food or refrigerators or paper get distributed to the public? Think about it. Now we follow along with Joe Bachman's recollections, and he writes, Strickland started off the class by saying, all right then, commodity distribution. How do people get stuff from the workforce? Emma raised her hand first. She said, I was thinking about grocery stores, and I don't see any reason for them to drastically change. An obvious difference would be no payment required. People would go around with carts and gather what they need. There would have to be some sort of restrictions governing hoarding. For instance, someone couldn't walk out with 50 cans of tuna, leaving none for the next person. But I can't imagine that a majority of people would think of doing that. What would be the point? If the whole cooperative system is set up and running efficiently, no one would have to feel a need to hoard anything. There would be plenty for all. But I suppose there's always a few, so yeah, there should probably be some hoarding restrictions. Then Tracy said, the agricultural segment would produce the food, which would get transported to these grocery centers where they would be available to the public. Scott added, there wouldn't be competing brands anymore, and much of the food could be sold in bulk. Things like grains and pastas, nuts, milk, and spices. Anything like that could be in large vats or containers where you could just scoop out or in some way access what you need. Or maybe there would be some sort of automated dispensing systems improving efficiency. Milt interjected, and people could bring their own reusable containers to fill up. This is sort of a pet peeve of mine. No more use once and throw away mentality, but rather a more conservationist approach. Without the competing brands, there wouldn't be a need for all the fancy packaging. I'm seeing a far more efficient, less wasteful system. Currently, commercial grocery establishments have policies in place to trash perfectly good food. As new shipments arrive, they simply trash the older produce. It's such an enormous waste. It happens daily all over the country. It's considered a good, economically sound business practice. Roger then said, think about all the trash that would be eliminated, all the packaging, boxes, cardboard that just gets thrown out after we eat the rice or cereal or brownies. How much garbage is that every day? It's staggering. If everyone had their own reusable containers, imagine how much garbage and packaging waste would be eliminated. Carol then said, there probably wouldn't be much, if anything, in the way of snack foods like crackers and chips or boxed mixes or processed cereals or soft drinks, and certainly no TV dinners or frozen pizzas or things of that nature. It would be just your basic, real food. People could then create whatever they wanted from this. They could bake their own crackers and chips if they chose. Then she laughed. There might be various clubs like we spoke of earlier devoted to this kind of thing. I could see that. Cracker baking groups. Sounds funny, but it would probably happen. People would be into it. But the workforce would not be used for these purposes. The workforce would only be tasked with producing the raw, wholesome foods and ingredients, not the specialty items. She added, businesses compete over these snacky processed foods now because there are huge profits involved catering to people's snack food addictions. But I don't think it should be a workforce function. Those types of tastes are very personal. It's an extremely varied and whimsical market, not universal at all. The workforce should only be tasked with the basic fundamentals, not recipes for snack foods. Then Patty said, people would surely be eating a lot healthier and doing a lot more of their own cooking and food preparation. There wouldn't be any more fast food chains. People wouldn't need them anymore. Our lives would slow down a bit, not having to compete in the dog-eat-dog rat race world of money. People would have time to prepare their own meals and enjoy sitting down with friends and family. Not so rush, 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 on the go, you snooze, you lose lifestyle. People would experiment creatively with various recipes. I can imagine a tremendous wealth of online resources in this area, shared by people with a love for the culinary arts. There's already a tremendous amount of this online. It would only become more abundant. Roger then said, and with more wholesome foods, people would stay healthier, putting far less demand on the medical institutions we were talking about earlier. The medical arts and sciences could be focused more on preventative medicine rather than reactive. Then John added, and without all the competing markets in the agricultural business, the workforce segment could take the time and utilize its resources for implementing a healthier, more organic approach to food production without worrying about costs and profits. Tracy then excitedly declared, this would entirely eliminate hunger. I just realized that. Do you all get what this would mean? No one would be homeless or hungry anymore. This was big. The eyebrows definitely went up with this comment. No one had actually made this point yet. Everyone thought about it for a minute. The implications were staggering. This system would entirely eliminate hunger and homelessness. In fact, it would eliminate any and all consequences of poverty. Poverty would be eliminated entirely. There was nothing to say. It was simply obvious. There was a moment, and then Milt broke the silence and got us back on track. This whole food distribution center idea, he said, could also be expanded to include other workforce products as well. There could be building and construction distribution centers where people could go and pick up building supplies. These would be similar to maybe our modern Home Depots or Lowe's. If you needed a hammer or nail or saw or lumber, then this is where you'd get it. And you wouldn't have to decide if you should try to save a little money and get the cheaper hammer or spend a little more on the better made one. They would all just be the high quality ones. Why would there be any reason for the workforce to produce anything that wasn't of the highest quality? Cost would no longer be a factor. Everything would be built to last forever. Repeat business would not be needed, like in a money system. The less things that need to be remade, the better. Jeremy added, and for various other household items, there would be other types of distribution centers like Target stores or Walmarts for things like furniture, scissors, paper, toothbrushes. Then Linda inserted, the things the workforce supplies may fluctuate from time to time according to need. You know, as things change, certain tools or items will improve with innovation or become obsolete altogether. Then John said, and in this system, I'm betting there will be a great deal of change and innovation because it won't be based on or held back by cost or profit anymore. There will be more legitimate opportunities for regular people to put forth innovative ideas. And with a rotation system in place, People will be exposed to many aspects of the workforce, encouraging fresh perspectives from an entire society continually moving into ever-changing positions. Strickland then summarized. Okay, so the workforce would have various segments for the production of our everyday materials, tools, food, and other necessities, and would also have segments for their distribution. These would be centers where individuals could just walk in and gather what they need. These centers would supply all manner of goods and materials needed by the general public. And these basic materials and tools could then be utilized by the various clubs and institutions we've talked about for the fashioning of any specialty tools or equipment needed for the furthering of the activities of these special clubs, organizations, or institutions. Yes? There were nods. Next class, he said, let's sum all of this up. Let's draw some conclusions. Is cooperatism possible in a modern industrial world? Is it desirable? Does it have advantages? Think about it. We now finish with an excerpt from Carter Osborne's reflections of the last class on the cooperatism topic. He writes, the class decided to draw up a chart listing the pros and cons of the money system versus a cooperative system. This ended up being far more tedious and confusing than we had anticipated and wasn't really helping us draw any substantial conclusions. Milt then, in an effort to simplify and clarify things, asked the question, what does the money system allow for or accomplish that cooperatism does not? That is truly the question, isn't it? He said. They both allow for all the needs and services that allow people to live a sustainable, modern, middle-class existence. Well, actually, that is not entirely true. They both do that, yes, but not for everyone at all times. Only cooperatism does that for all people at all times. In a money system, the economy has its ups and downs. In times of recession and certainly depression, it is apparent that everyone is not able to sustain that state. But even in a normal or even thriving economy, there still seem to be homeless, there still seem to be people on welfare, there still seem to be those that are unable to make ends meet. The money system, he said, does make it possible for some individuals to live a privileged life. It does have huge advantages for those who become wealthy and command a degree of power, using that wealth and power as a means to control the quality and format of their lives. That is truly the only advantage I can think of. Cooperatism, he continued, doesn't give anyone advantages over others, but it doesn't seem to limit anyone either. He went on to say, it's a fair system for everybody, and it eliminates all of the greed, corruption, and the endless, senseless frustration caused by the barriers and bureaucracy and red tape that seems to surround everyday life in a money system. So what's to compare? He asked. Think about it. I ask you, is there any doubt here? Then, after a slight pause, he finished with, that's my conclusion. Up went the eyebrows for the last time, and that was that. Not even Jordan LaMarche offered any sort of rebuttal. This wasn't, I'm sure, because he had changed his mind on the subject, no, but he was content to just let it finally rest.